What is up, everybody, and welcome back to my channel. Hi, hello. It's a cold winter day, and I'm not gonna lie, I really didn't feel like filming until just like a few minutes ago, and then I was watching BuzzFeed Unsolved, and I said, I want to film my own little paranormal moment. So that's what we're doing. Valentine's Day was just a few days ago, so happy Valentine's Day. I'm filming this on the 16th, and I'm feeling very festive, in case you can't tell. My pink, so I'm going to do a pink look today, and I'm going to do my little disclaimers real quick, which I can't remember. My one disclaimer is if I keep looking down throughout the video, it's because I have notes, and I don't memorize my notes, so I just have to look to make sure I'm getting stuff correct. So if I keep looking down, that's why. Okay, with that said, I'm very excited to start today's video because this place is one that you guys picked. Like I said in the last episode, every episode, I forgot my eyeshadow primer. Like I said in the last episode, or the last video, every video for season 2 of Spooky Saturdays was picked by you guys. And I'm very excited to get into today's. If you did not see last week's video, it was on Myrtle's Plantation, which is one of the, I think it's actually the most haunted house in America. If you did not watch that, I will leave that linked down below, along with a playlist to all of the Spooky Saturdays that I have ever made. And I will also have a playlist to the Spooky Saturdays Season 1. So if you want to go back and watch a series of not every single haunted place, but a lot of haunted places in Mansfield, Ohio, which is where I was born, raised, and still live in, then go click on that. I forgot to do my intro. I knew I was forgetting something. Something fell off. Hi, my name is Chase, and I'm a hot mess, as if you can't tell. My hair looks really bad too. You know how Nicki Minaj said colorful hair don't care? Yeah, I have quarantine hair, and I do care. I'm not even quarantining anymore, but like, I'm a hot mess. So if you like that, if you like hot messes, if you like inconsistency, then subscribe to my channel and become a member of the Hot Mess Express. This train goes full steam ahead and it stops quite a bit along the way. So you have ample opportunities for bathroom breaks and snack breaks, whatever your heart desires, you'll be able to do that. Now, I promise you, you will have time to snack and stuff. I'm feeling very pink today because of Valentine's Day, so I think I'm gonna do a pink look. I think that's what we're gonna do, and I'm just really gonna get in there. So today, what are we talking about? Well, we are talking about one of the most haunted prisons in America, maybe in the world. It's definitely one of the most known haunted prisons. We are talking about Alcatraz. Very excited to talk about this one. I have so much history, so much paranormal stuff. Again, just like in last video, I want to give a shout out to And That's Why We Drink, which is a podcast. I got pretty much all of my information, if not all of it, from that podcast, so definitely go check them out. It's a paranormal / true crime podcast. It's very good, and I think you should go watch it, or not watch it, you can't watch it, but listen to it. I took these notes probably about 2.5 weeks ago at this point. So if I'm all over the place, excuse me. Like I said, and I remember writing these notes and thinking they were very confusing. So now I can only imagine how I feel now that it's been a few weeks. Oh, this is gonna be interesting. Let's start at the beginning. So Alcatraz, oh god, that's pigmented. I was not expecting that pigment. Let me tell you what. Okay, bubblegum pink. Alcatraz opened was open. It opened in 1934, and then it stayed open as a prison until 1963. And during its run as a prison, Alcatraz held 15,000 inmates, if not more. That's just what we could find. I say we, like I did any research, but as far as people know, that is how many inmates Alcatraz held while it was a prison. And Alcatraz is kind of like it was just a bad place from the start. So we've talked about one other prison on this channel before. If you haven't watched the video, go to the playlist. We talked about the Ohio State Reformatory, also known as the Mansfield Reformatory. And that place started out as a rehabilitation center for criminals who, they're like blue-collar criminals, to go and kind of, learn from their ways and better themselves. Yeah, Alcatraz wasn't that. Alcatraz was not a rehabilitation prison. Alcatraz was there strictly for punishment. They had the worst of the worst people at Alcatraz. So it's just started out bad. So, okay, here is where I kind of started getting confused taking notes, and I'm going to try to make this so it's not confusing and we are kind of on the same page, okay? So, Alcatraz has always been there as an island. It's also called the Rock, and it's always been there as an island. And the first people to inhabit it. First people to inhabit it was a Native American tribe, and I believe their name was hello. I really hope you guys can't hear that chirping, because that would be annoying. Let me look up the name real quick. I wrote it down, but I can't remember how to pronounce it. Okay, I think it's pronounced Olan. Ohlone. Olan, I believe is how you pronounce the tribe name. They were the first people to inhabit this island. It's already starting out on a bad foot, isn't it? So the Olan tribe inhabited this island up until the 1840s. And then in the 1840s, the U.S. military came in, and they were pretty much like, yeah, sorry, it's our island now, so get off. Which is kind of like what has happened to all of the land the Native Americans have had. So it was taken over by the U.S. military, and they started building the base there, and in that base, they built a cell house, and that was like the first kind of jail that was on the island. And then eventually that closed down, and they built Alcatraz, and then Alcatraz closed down, and now it's a tourist destination. So I hope that was like easy enough to understand and like get behind, because that took me a minute to figure out how I was going to talk about that. The Olan Tribe lived on Alcatraz until the 1840s, when the U.S. military came in and they were like, yeah, this is our land now. And then they started building a military base there, along with a cell house for court-martialed military convicts. And they were the first prisoners to ever be imprisoned on Alcatraz, the island. So this place has a really long history, and I'm not going to touch on all of it. So I really recommend you doing your own research. We are going to jump ahead to the Civil War. Yes, we are going far back into the time machine for this one. And we are going to talk about the Civil War. We're not going to talk about the Civil War. We're talking about during the Civil War. They started holding, now let me read this. They held Confederate soldiers, Southern sympathizers, and Native American leaders, along with a bunch of other people. So it went from just military convicts to a bunch of different people being held at this jailhouse. Alcatraz before was Alcatraz, when it was just this jailhouse that the U.S. military had built there. It had no running water, it had no heat, no electricity, it had nothing for the inmates. They were just kind of there, which on the island would be that weather would be horrible because of the wind and everything. I had to take a little hiatus. Everyone's home, so there's a lot of noise going on. So if you hear anything else, just know I'm not home alone today. Everyone is home today. So anyway, so when the prison was just a cell house made for the U.S. military, it was horrible for people to live there. There was no water, no electricity, no heat. There was nothing for the inmates. And it was just dirty. It was all around a very dirty place to be at and to be held and to live. So because of this, disease ran rampant in the cell house, and a lot of prisoners died from diseases because there either weren't cures for them, or they just didn't care, or they wouldn't cooperate. Like the what are they called? The people who work at the jail. they didn't care. So a lot of people died from diseases in this when it was just a jailhouse. To give you an even more of an idea of how horrible this place was for the inmates were chained to the walls with nothing in the cells, like no bed, no nothing. They were chained to the walls, or no, and they had chains around, I think it was their feet or something, or I think I just made that up. They were chained up to a ball, so they literally had a ball and chain around them in sweat rooms. Their cells were sweat rooms. That was what they lived in. So now fast forward to 1910, and they went back to just holding military convicts, and they got rid of everyone else they were holding, and they finally got, I don't know if they had a name before, I didn't look that up, I probably should have. The first thing that I found of a name was in 1910, and it was called the United States Penitentiary, which makes sense since it was ran by the Army. And they had that name, and they held only military convicts from 1910 to 1912. And in 1912, it changed yet again. Sorry, I just realized that wasn't even on. So I'm like not here today. I'm not connecting. I don't know what is going on, but I'm just like not feeling it today. So I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on. So in between 1910 and 1912, the United States Penitentiary, or Alcatraz, gained a reputation for being one of the worst prisons in America, and it was one of the toughest prisons. It was just not a good place to go for prisoners. And it also was the Army's first long-term prison. So it was just a bunch of firsts for them. So the reason why it got this reputation of being a horrible prison and being so strict and everything is because the guards were so strict at the prison, and everything was strict. They had strict rules that the inmates had to follow. They had a strict diet that the inmates were forced to follow, because what else were they going to do? Like, that they had to eat. They had hard labor that they were forced to do, and that's just among other things. That's just 3 things out of many that they had to deal with. Something else that made this prison stand out among others is that it was escape proof. Since it was on an island, it made it almost impossible for inmates to get out. It did happen a few times. There were a few escapes or escape attempts, but for the most part, it was escape proof. Like, there was no getting in or out. Well, there was getting in, but there was no getting out of this prison. You were stuck there once you got there. So one of the reasons why this place was so strict is because when they were doing the hiring process for the prison, they were finding the strictest guards and wardens that they could find. That's who they were hiring. So they were making sure they had the best of the best to come in and guard this place. One of the things that was surprising to me when doing this research, she's chunky. One of the things that was surprising doing this research is that the inmates only had 5 rights when they went into this jail. They had the right to food, they had the right to clothes, they had the right to a cell so they could sleep, they had the right to see a doctor, and they had the right for weekly showers. So not daily showers, weekly showers. And that was it. Everything else was up to the guards' discretion. And on top of having some of the strictest guards and wardens in America, Alcatraz, because at this point, did I say? I did not say, did I? No. At this point, it is now Alcatraz. So in 1912, they tore down the military base, and they kept the cell block up, and they built around the cell block to make Alcatraz. I don't think I said that. This is now Alcatraz. But on top of having the worst and the strictest guards and wardens, they also had some of the worst inmates in the country. And they had very high profile names. I also don't know if I said, but I'm doing a very monochromatic pink look. So I have like a pink everything, really. I don't know why, I'm just really feeling, well, I know why. It's Valentine's Day. It's February, so I'm feeling the pink. Okay, real quick, I am going to put some mascara on, and then I will be back to talk about the inmates of Alcatraz. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back, and we're going to talk about some of the most famous inmates that went to Alcatraz to serve time. One of them, I'm sure everyone is very familiar with, Al Capone. He served at Alcatraz, and we'll talk about him later. Another one, George Machine Gun Kelly, served at Alcatraz. Floyd Hamilton served at Alcatraz, which that name probably doesn't sound super familiar when you first hear it, but he was the driver for Bonnie and Clyde. And then Robert Stroud, I think is his last name. However, he is more commonly known as the Bird Man of Alcatraz. Hi, so I'm editing my Alcatraz video right now, and I went on like a 6-minute tangent about the Bird Man of Alcatraz, and it really has no meaning, or I don't know why I did that. So I'm just gonna, the reason why my whole foundation is done, and I think I did my concealer too, maybe not, I don't know. It's because I went on like a 6-minute rant about the Bird Man of Alcatraz. Not important. All I need to know is that he had birds at his one prison, and was he went to college for the study of birds or whatever. But then when he went to Alcatraz, he didn't have birds. He wasn't allowed to have birds there. So that's all you need to know. But for some reason, I went on for 6 minutes about this man. So let's talk about how escape-proof Alcatraz was. Because like I said, it was built to be escape-proof, and it really was. Alcatraz was open and operating as a prison for 29 years. And in those 29 years, they only had 14 escape attempts by 36 inmates. So, 29 years, that's a pretty good number. And out of those 14 escape attempts, only 5 made it out. So, this prison pretty much was successful at being escape-proof when only 5 people got out in 29 years. And out of those 5 people that escaped, they were never found. No one knows what happened to them. A lot of people speculate that they just went back to San Francisco. A lot of people speculate that they fled to Mexico. And a lot of people speculate that they died while in the ocean, because it was very rough water around Alcatraz. One of the most famous escape attempts, there's 2 really famous escape attempts. And this one was 3 inmates, 2 of them were brothers in Alcatraz, and they hatched this plan to escape. So, they had a bunch of jobs at Alcatraz. All the inmates did. They all were required jobs. And I believe one of them worked in the cafeteria. So they stole metal spoons from the cafeteria, and they had these vents in their cells. And so they took these spoons and they started scraping away at the wall around the vent. They pulled the vent out and they started scraping away at it until they had a big enough hole they could crawl through, So they had this humongous hole, right? And another one of them worked in the barber shop at Alcatraz. So they were able to get dummy heads and not fake hair. It was hair that had been cut from different inmates. And they made these dummies, right? And they put them in their beds to make it look like they were sleeping, and then they escaped. The warden and the guards did not know they had escaped until they went around to check all of them. They went to their cell and they would try to wake them up, check them, whatever. They wouldn't wake up, so the guards went into the cell and shook them. And when they did that, the head fell out all out of the bed. So they ended up making a raft. I don't know. I guess they had freaking arts and crafts, in Alcatraz too, but there was like a job where I guess you built stuff. I don't know. But one of them built a raft, and they got away. And like I said, they weren't discovered until the morning when the guards went around for like the wake up call or whatever. And they were like, oh crap, it's snowing. Anyway, and they were like, oh crap, they escaped, haha, oops. And like I said, those people were never found. And so yeah, they escaped and they were never found. So one of the most famous escape plots and attempts that did not follow through is known as the Battle of Alcatraz, and it happened in 1946. And even I knew about this. And like, I'm not a humongous fan of Alcatraz. It would be cool to visit someday if I'm ever in San Francisco, but it's not a place where I've been like, I want to go there. But I knew about this, and it is a crazy story, and it's almost like a war, like it turned into a war. It's nuts. So this is a very long story that I don't feel like telling because I didn't feel like writing it down, none of that. So I'm going to try to make this long story very short. What you need to know is there were 6 inmates, and they all started plotting that they were going to escape. So one night, somehow the inmates got the guards and they beat them up, and they got guns, and they got the guards' keys, and they killed 3 of the cops, or the guards that were in the prison, and they wounded 11 of them. Plus they ended up wounding a bunch of inmates around them because of the gunfire, because the guards were shooting at the inmates, and the inmates had gotten the guns, so they were shooting back at the guards. It was a shootout. The 2, I don't know how many, of the inmates out of the 6 that did this got a few of the guards, it was 2 of them, and they locked them in the cells. That way they couldn't escape or fight back. They took their guns and locked them in a cell. And then they shot and killed them while they were in the cell, which is just cruel. So this quickly became a riot because a lot of the other inmates were getting let out by these 6 inmates, and then they were overpowering the guards, and the inmates were fighting with each other. It was a whole big thing, and it turned into this big riot on Alcatraz. And I guess it was such a loud thing that people in San Francisco could hear this riot going on. Like, it was such a big deal, and it was so loud that the people in the city could hear it going on. And it became so big that the guards in Alcatraz couldn't contain it, and they had to call in the Coast Guard, the Army, the Navy, and the Marines to try to help them get this under control. So the Marines, in order to enter the prison, ended up drilling a hole in the ceiling of the jail, and then threw grenades into the jail to clear the crowds out. And I guess when you go there, you can still see the hole in the ceiling that they drilled into. So once the Marines and the Coast Guard and everybody got there, the 6 inmates kind of realized, okay, the jig is up. We've been caught. We just need to, surrender. Well, but they didn't surrender. But they realized the jig was up, and they weren't going to escape. So 3 of the men pretended to be hostages, and they kind of blended into the crowd that was being evacuated, which I don't understand why they didn't just, I don't understand how any other inmates weren't like, it's them, they did it. But they were able to get out of the jail, and, punishment came to them, but it was later. The other 3 people the inmates who did this, decided they were going to hide, and I think it was a corridor, from I don't know, in hopes they wouldn't get found, which they cleared up, whatever. So they hid. They were found by, I don't know who it was by, but they were found, and they got shot and killed on the spot, just right there. They were shot dead. And then eventually they found out who the other 3 inmates were. 2 of them got executed, and then 1 just got a sentence of 100 years. And the reason why he did not get executed is because he, while this was happening, was not shooting the guards or shooting any inmates. He was actually trying to help the wounded and get them to safety so they wouldn't get killed. So in 1937 alone, 14 inmates went insane, actually critically insane. And mental health was not okay there. It was, a lot of the guards just figured it was the inmates' way of wanting to get out, so it wasn't taken seriously, and it was not treated. It was just, you know, the inmates, or not the inmates, the guards just thought it was a way for inmates to get out of work or get special treatment. So a lot of the inmates there went insane and did very crazy stuff because their mental illness was not treated. So one of these instances, just for example, and this is going to be kind of graphic, so just if you don't want to hear it, I guess skip ahead, just, you know, and try to find when I'm done talking about it. But they were working at the barber shop, and I guess these two inmates were lovers, and the one was cutting the other's hair and just decided that he was going to stab him in the neck with a pair of scissors. So that happened. And then another inmate was at work in the kitchen. This is also graphic. And he decided he was just going to grab a butcher knife, just kind of go crazy, and cut all of his fingers off on one hand. So he grabbed a butcher knife, put his hand down, and while laughing, cut all of his fingers off. Every single last one of them. While laughing about it. Like, just, like it was the funniest thing in the world, you know? And then when the cops came to get him, at this point he'd already cut all his fingers off, and he begged the cop to cut the other ones off, because he couldn't, because all his fingers are gone, so he like begged this cop to cut his fingers off on his other hand. Ooh. Another inmate at the prison had eyeglasses, and he broke them and then slashed his own throat, and then decided that he was going to climb the fence around the prison because he knew that if he did that, he would get shot, and sure enough, the guards shot and killed him. I mean, really. Another one, another inmate took a pencil sharpener and took the blade out and then slashed his own jugular. And it's believed that more men suffered from mental breakdowns here at this prison than any other prison in the entire US to date. So when the prison became Alcatraz, those years were known as the silent years, and that is because the inmates were not allowed to talk at all. So they were allowed 3 minutes in the morning to talk either to each other or to the guards, and that was it. No more talking for them. And then 2 hours on the weekends, they were allowed to talk as well. And if they did talk during these times when they were not allowed, then they would be put in solitary over the weekend, and they would just be kept there just to think about what they did. You wouldn't think that they could do this to people, but they did. They could and they did. They got away with it. I mean, it's just, you would, like, it's just torture. It's not even a prison. This is just like torture. That's it. So I said we're gonna talk about Capone. So let's talk about him. Capone was in solitary a lot because he was constantly breaking the rules. He never followed them. So he was in solitary all the time. And Capone eventually went insane in Alcatraz. He refused to leave his cell to eat, and he was found crouched in the corner of the cell talking to himself on multiple occasions. Or he would just like sit in his bed and stare at nothing. It's also said that Al Capone would go into the showers and take his banjo, and it would just be him in the showers, and he would just sit there and play his banjo. And eventually Capone was transferred to a hospital or something. I don't remember. I know that he was released from Alcatraz because he did get so bad, and he ended up passing away because of his mental illnesses. I'm real quick going to set my face, and then I will be right back. So real quick, I want to talk about something that's interesting in Alcatraz that I didn't know about until I listened to, and that's how we drink. And that is that Alcatraz has dungeons. They have dungeons under cell block A, and these dungeons were worse than these cells. The inmates would be chained to the walls in these prisons, and they'd be forced to stand there naked for 10 to 12 hours a day. There was one toilet that all of them had to use when they were in this dungeon, and the toilet was only ever emptied once a week. That's it. I mean, that's just nasty. So Alcatraz ended up closing as a prison on March 21st in 1963. And like I said, before the U.S. military took Alcatraz, it was inhabited by a Native American tribe. So that same tribe decided they were going to take their land back when the prison closed. And they were just kind of like, okay, like the U.S. military was like, go ahead, we don't care, do it. And so they did. And then after living there for just a few months, they realized that it was way too hard to live on the island because you're just living on a big rock. And the prison was still there, so they were just like living in this prison on a big rock. And it was hard to get supplies, hard to get food. So they realized that they didn't want to live there. So they ended up abandoning the island. And it has since, in recent years, became a humongous tourist destination in California. They do tours there. They do like self-guided tours. They do guided tours. They do all kinds of stuff there. They do ghost hunts. It's become just a very big tourist attraction in general. Okay, so now that I'm like pretty much done with my makeup, let's get into the haunted stuff. So before the U.S. military even came on the island, before it was Alcatraz or anything, the Native American tribe, Olan. They were the earliest inhabitants of the island, like I said, and they said in documents that people have since found that evil spirits inhabited the island. And like I said, Alcatraz is one of the most haunted places in the world. It's among top 5 most haunted spots in California, and it has been featured on multiple ghost shows, just TV shows in general. It was featured on Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters, a show called Ghost Lab. A lot of YouTubers have went to Alcatraz to explore it. And it was featured in Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo and What's New Scooby-Doo. I had to throw that one in there. You know I had to. So people say they hear banjo music while alone in the shower, which, again, if you remember, Al Capone, when his mental health was slipping, he would play the banjos in the shower. So people say they can hear banjo music if they're alone in the showers. In cell block A, one employee said that she was walking around, I think she was closing up for the night, but she walked past the door that led to the dungeon area in cell block A. And as she walked past the door, she heard a loud scream coming from the dungeons, almost like someone was in pain. And she did what any smart person would do. She got the heck out of Dodge. She ran away from that place. And later on, she told her boss, and when her boss asked her why she didn't report it sooner, she said that another worker had heard the same thing, screams coming from the dungeon, and when they reported it, someone went down to check out what was going on down there, and there was no one in the dungeons. So she just was kind of like, it's the same thing that happened to that person. We're going to move on. The way that they broke it down, and that's what I drank, was by cell block, so that's how I broke it down too. That's like the only thing in cell block A. Cell block B didn't really have any paranormal accounts, so we're going to cell block C. Cell block C is where the Battle of Alcatraz took place. So a lot of people have reported hearing bullets clanging against the doors in cell block C. They've also heard men screaming and guards yelling, "Get down." A lot of visitors at Alcatraz have also reported seeing men walking around in prison uniforms, and when they bring it up, like, "Oh, great actors," they're like, yeah, there aren't actors walking around in prison garb. Like, that's not what we do." And so a lot of people believe that those are the souls or the spirits of the 3 men who were shot and killed in the corridor during the Battle of Alcatraz. Something that used to happen when Alcatraz was a prison, because they couldn't speak, the inmates couldn't, when someone would be getting beat by the guards, the inmates would start rattling their chains. That way it could get attention from other inmates, like, hey, this is happening. And I guess it would get so loud that people would hear the chains rattling from San Francisco. They would hear these chains on the island. And people nowadays still report hearing chains rattling. There's also a laundry room in cell block C, and a lot of people have reported smelling smoke while they are in this laundry room. And that's interesting and kind of shocking because in the 1970s, a fire broke out in the laundry room. And a lot of workers and tour guides and stuff have seen a heavy black smoke in the laundry room, and they smell the smoke and it smells like a fire. So they go to get help, and when they go back, the smell is gone and so is the smoke. It's like it never happened, like it was never there. At one point, they had a psychic come to Alcatraz, and they were on a tour, and they got to the laundry room, and the psychic, I don't know if it was a female or a male, but the psychic said that they could sense someone in the room. They started describing this bald guy with beady eyes, and going through this tour, they had brought a former inmate from Alcatraz, so that way they could either prove or disprove what this one was saying. And so when the psychic, I just said a woman, but I don't know. When the psychic said, there's a man in here, he's bald, beady eyes, the inmate knew exactly who she was talking about, and he said that it was a guy named Butcher. We're going to talk about what happens all over the jail now, because there's a lot of activity just all over the jail. So multiple people who are on tours and tour guides have reported being touched or being grabbed by something that is not there. People have heard whispers. That's so creepy. Can you imagine? Oh. Investigators have gotten whole names while doing EVPs and talking to these spirits, and they have like asked, who are we talking to? Who is this? And they have gotten whole names of past inmates. One group was an Alcatraz investigating, and a female investigator felt someone grab her butt. Sorry, I know it's kind of funny though. Felt someone grab her butt, and then they caught an EVP saying, it was a man saying, "I want you." Shadows are seen on the catwalks in Alcatraz and behind bars of the cells. And one figure that has been seen, people believe to be Bird Man. He has been seen in his cell and also in the library, which is where he spent a lot of his time researching, I'm assuming, birds and stuff like that. Like I said, I'm going pink. We're pink eyes, pink highlighter, pink blush, pink hoodie, pink lip. Let's do it. People have also reported hearing crying while they are in Alcatraz on tours or just working. And a lot of apparitions have been seen throughout Alcatraz. Native American apparitions have been seen, apparitions of guards, apparitions of Native American, I already said that. Okay, Miss Pink. Hi, Valentine's Day. So we're not done. This is the final look. We aren't done talking about ghosts, okay? Let's get into it. A man in a gray suit and hat with mutton chops has been seen throughout the prison. I almost forgot what the word was. And the temperature is said to change whenever he comes around, it'll get a lot colder, and also the power will go out in whichever room he is in. My lips are uneven, that bothers me. They don't look uneven, but on camera they do. Whatever, anyway. There used to be a lighthouse on property. Since it was an island, they'd have one for ships to know where the island was or whatever. And it has since crumbled because it just wasn't kept up. It was old, so it has been torn down or crumbled or something. But people coming to the island have said that they have seen either the light of the lighthouse or the lighthouse in general. And they'll blink and it'll be gone. Or they'll look away and it'll be gone. Because how do you see a phantom building? Girl. But people have said it. And apparently it'll have a bright green light. Which again is okay, Scooby-Doo. That sounds like something else, whatever. That's not my business. Phantom screams and gunshots have been heard throughout the prison. To the point where guards, police and stuff have been called in to check it out, and when they go in, there is no one in the prison. They can't be found anywhere. They have night patrol for Alcatraz. It's still heavily guarded, and night patrol has said on multiple occasions they've heard people running around in it, in the building, and when they go to check it out, there'll be no one there. It's just them in the building, but that's it. And then they used to have a hospital and the cafeteria, the mess hall, and people have reported hearing screaming throughout the mess hall and what the hospital used to be. There's a lot of screaming going on, and that wouldn't work with me. Laughing and screaming, I told you, laughing and screaming. There's a lot of that. Phantom screaming going on. No ma'am, no ma'am. There's also a lot of unexplained crashings, things falling over and not getting knocked down. Like I said, a lot of unexplained screams. Cell doors are getting closed on their own. They're getting slammed shut when there's no one near them. Cold spots are felt throughout the entire building, and sudden temperature changes will be felt, along with a lot of phantom moans. So that's fun. So I guess we are going to talk about D Block for a second. Like I said, it's been a long time since I wrote these notes, so I don't remember half this stuff I wrote. So there are 3 places in Alcatraz: D Block, Strip Cell, or Treatment Unit, and they were all for hard to handle inmates. So violent inmates, inmates with mental illness, things like that. And in that unit, there are pitch black cells, which is where the inmates were held. They were stripped naked and given only water and bread once a day. That's it. That's all they had. Oh, they also had a mattress. So they were stripped naked in these cells. They were only able to have water and bread once a day, and they were given a mattress just on the floor. That's it. But it was taken away from them during the day, so they only had it at night, and then in the morning they would come like, okay, taking that. So they just like stand there in the dark. There was a toilet in these cells. However, the toilet was just a hole in the floor. There was no sink, nothing like that, no toilet paper, no nothing. They also were not allowed to shower or see anyone else but the guards when they would come to give food or take the mattress away. And they also, of course, were not allowed to leave the cell. The reason I'm bringing this up is because one of the most haunted cell block in the prison is cell block I can't remember my handwriting. It's either 14D or 19D, but I think it's 14D or 19D. It's the most haunted room in the jail. People, when they go into the cell, they feel like there's someone else in there with them, and they've heard noises from the cell when they are in there, or when they're just like walking past the cell, they would hear noises. When the prison was still a prison, an inmate was sent into this cell, and when he was released from this cell, I guess he was like really just shaken up and not the same, and the guards wanted to know what happened to him. And he said that he went into the cell and he saw the spirit of an inmate whose legs, both of his legs, were broken, and the guards were just left him there to die. Like he was just left there. And that is actually on record of happening. An inmate was sent to the cell, and I don't know if the guards broke his legs or what, but the guards just kind of left him in the cell to die. And he did. He died in the cell. And this inmate would have no way of knowing that happened, but he did. So this story is probably the scariest one that I'm going to tell in the whole video. It happened in the 1940s. So this is when the Alcatraz was still a prison. An inmate was in 14 and or 19D. And he started yelling to be let out because there was a thing with glowing red eyes and it was trying to kill him. So of course the guards didn't believe him. They were like, yeah, okay, sure. And it went all night long with this guy screaming and pleading to be let out because this thing was going to kill him. The guards ignored him, and then the next morning he was quiet. The noise had stopped. So the guards went to check on him and they found him dead in his cell. And he died from strangulation. So he died from being strangled, but he did not strangle himself. He was strangled by hands, but they said that they weren't his hands that strangled him. Which, duh, because I don't think you can strangle yourself because you'll eventually pass out before you die. And then you can't like have that pressure anymore. So then you like wake back up. He was strangled, and they said that he was strangled by someone wrapping their hands around his neck, but it wasn't him. And after that, to this day, people say that they see glowing red eyes in this cell whenever they pass by it or when they're in it. And it's just a very menacing feeling when they're in the cell. And it's kind of interesting because after that happened, after the guy died, multiple guards, not one, but like multiple of them, when they would do head count, they would count too many and they would like write down the number or whatever. And they'd be like, yeah, that's not how many inmates are here. And they kept seeing that same guy who died in that cell. They kept seeing him throughout the prison. And when they were doing head count, they would see him and then they would be like, wait, and they would look and he'd be gone. So, and it happened for like the week after the guy passed away. And then eventually, I guess the spirit decided he had enough and he left. He said goodbye. Another apparition that has been seen in the prison is of a man in 1800s prison clothes. and he's just been seen throughout the prison walking around, but he's been seen multiple times, so he's a pretty prominent apparition. It was 14D. That's what it is, because I wrote it again. So it's cell 14D. That's the most haunted. And 14D is always cold, no matter what season, even if all of the other cells, like this is solitary. Like I said, I need to not write notes 2 weeks and then not go without. So this is solitary, okay? Anyway, all the other solitary cells can be hot, and this one will be ice cold. So there's just a lot going on in cell 14D, and like I said, it's the most haunted cell in the prison and in Alcatraz. It has a lot of just dark energy and a lot of menacing nastiness going on there. And that's the end. That is the end of this video. This video took so long to film. I'm gonna apologize first to Editing Chase for having to edit this mess, and secondly to you guys, because something wasn't clicking. I just didn't feel on today. I didn't feel, something just felt off. And then also, like I said, I took those notes like probably a week or two ago at this point. And then after I wrote them, I didn't look at them again until right now. So I kept getting things wrong, and so I just apologize. The vibe just isn't right now. But we got through it. I hope you guys liked the video. Alcatraz was a very interesting place to research. I'd love to go back. I've never been there. Do you see what I mean? This is what's happening to me. I'd love to go at some point and do a ghost tour and see what's happening, what's popping up in Alcatraz. And I hope you guys liked it. Like I said, season 2 of Spooky Saturdays, it's on and poppin'. You guys picked the places that we're talking about this time, so stay tuned. This is only number 2 out of, I think, 10 is what I'm going to do. So, number 2 of 10. I'm very excited for next week. It's a different place, and it's not as well known as like Alcatraz is, or even Merle's Plantation. So I'm very excited for that. I haven't done any research, but I'm excited for it. And until next time, I will see you guys later. That doesn't make any sense. Whatever, I'm leaving. Happy Valentine's Day, even though it's not Valentine's Day. And I love you. Bye.